she was everybody's favorite Hindu Indian prosecutor and attorney general and senator, and now she becomes black. But, you know, I met her daddy, fine gentleman, Professor Harris. And the problem with her being black is Professor Harris says he's Caucasian, mixed Irish and Hindu. He doesn't have any black ancestors, but his Irish ancestors owned a lot of slaves in Jamaica and had them to work on plantation. So if mama is on the birth certificate listed as a Caucasian, daddy says he's a Caucasian Hindu and has no black ancestors, how did she get to be black?
I mean, the math is not mathing. How did she become black? It doesn't make sense. Okay? It only makes sense if you stole the identity of the help, which is so sick, so twisted.
And the birth certificate that she has is interesting because the confusion comes from a mistake. On the birth certificate, it lists the mother's race as Caucasian, national origin India, and religion Hindu. For the father, it does not list national origin. It does not list religion. It does not list anything about that, but where it says race, they put national origin in Jamaica by mistake. Now, if you've ever been to Jamaica and you go over to St. Elizabeth Parish, you see all the high, bright, and white that live in Jamaica. So I've got a good friend retired from law enforcement. He has a white wife, blonde-haired, blue eyes, but she was born in Jamaica. Her parents were born in Jamaica. One's blonde and blue-eyed, the other one's red-haired and gray-eyed. And they happen to be related to the King of England because they are aristocrats in England, but they were born in Jamaica. It's not unusual. You're not black just because you're from Jamaica, and they have a whole lot of white people that never left, and their ancestors owned a lot of slaves. The Maroons went up into the hill country and got themselves free back in the 1840s, but, you know, other than that, it is what it is in Jamaica. So just because you're from that country does not mean you are of the black race. So the problem is why don't you go get your daddy to give you an affidavit that you have a black ancestor? And since the only possible claim you have is through your great-grandmother, who he says was a Hindu house servant that just happens to be swarthy, where'd you get your blackness from? See, you're faking it again.
I realize that Americans really do not understand Jamaica. Let me give you an example. For most of the people that I saw on mainstream media that was trying to defend the vice president black ancestry, what they would say is that her mother is Indian and her father is Jamaican. Jamaica is an island. Jamaica is a country. It's not an ethnicity. There are black Jamaicans, there are white Jamaicans, there are Chinese Jamaicans, there are Indian Jamaicans.
At 93 years of age, Ram Haraj Rajbeef is a patriarch, a repository of experiences. He is one of the oldest living members of the Indian community in Jamaica. During a meeting with the Indian High Commissioner to Jamaica, His Excellency R. Massaquoi, Mr. Rajbeef opened the book on the rich historic and cultural life of his family's journey to Jamaica from India in 1907 and his own experiences growing up and raising a family in Jamaica.
My father had some friends and they want the friends them to do what, you know what I mean, and them follow them friends them come to Jamaica. And when them come to Jamaica now, the people who employ them have them different places. My father went in St. Mary. Now my father used to do agriculture in India and know the banana tree, how to plant and all them things there. So they like him because he know the routines. Yeah.
He went to school in Kingston for a short while.
My father never had no money to send me to high school. Yeah. So I went to learn trade. And how I get a trade, there was a gentleman, Dr. Varma, He was the president of the East Indian Association because these people then form a society. And we have most big people who understand. They start to cooperate with the Indians.
He got married and had 8 children of his own.
You never wish to go back to India and visit there.
Well,
now you are 93.
What really happened,
Yeah,
I have relatives go to India
yeah.
and them invited me. But because of my work, I have 8 children.
While sharing photographs, the retired machinist who worked at KIG for over 50 years took great care to pass on the knowledge of his parents' homeland, India, their cultural mores, values, and the contribution of the Indian community to Jamaica's development. The inclusion of the East Indians into Jamaica would enrich and expand the local tapestry. They were the first to successfully grow rice in Jamaica, establishing the island's first successful rice mill in the 1890s. They continue to influence the fields of medicine, agriculture, manufacturing, in-bond businesses, and sports. They introduced a range of spices, including curry powder, to Jamaican cuisine. Traditional Indian foods like curry goat, curried potatoes, eggplant, butter chicken, and roti have been steeped and infused into the national cuisine.
My mother always cooked dal, tarkari, Irish potato, which is aloo, string bean, long peas, generally these things.
He and his family enjoy the distinctive music, dance, and traditional dress which they have incorporated in their everyday lifestyle. They also observe traditional Indian religious and cultural celebrations like Diwali, which celebrates the victory of good over evil. In his seniority, Mr. Ragbeef has become a guardian of a distinct cultural ancestry, a steward that embodies the national motto, out of many, one people.
I get this all the time. Where are you from? I am from Jamaica. No, you're not. I am from Jamaica. Stop lying. I'm not stupid. Listen to me. Now let me fling on down the stairs. But you don't look Jamaican. You backside bum and look Jamaican. How the Ras Jamaican supposed to look like? Jamaican can look like anybody. White Jamaicans? You know what is really weird? People know that there was African slavery, but didn't know that they're white Jamaicans. Where the rats you think the slaves come from in the first place? You probably think some people just get up one day and say in Africa, I think it is a splendid day to randomly hop on a boat, go on the other side of the world and be a slave. What say you, my African acquaintance? Indeed, old chap. Obviously that did not happen. The slaves did not randomly appear there. They didn't grow to the ground like corn. They didn't go to the beach one day in Africa and then get lost and end up in the Caribbean. The Europeans brought them there. And some were actually servants too. Or maybe you think all the white people them just jump off of the island after that. You think them fly gone somewhere? There are Indian Jamaicans. There are Chinese Jamaicans. Whole heap. Why are people even surprised that there are Chinese Jamaicans and Indian Jamaicans? People of East Asian and East Indian descent, man. We're coming like mushrooms. We just pop up everywhere. I mean, I don't mean on the rocks or trees or toenails or nothing. But you know what I'm saying. Mushrooms is a terrible analogy. But yes, Indians and Chinese exist. If Indians were dead, I would not exist. But I've never seen a Jamaican that looks like you before. Not necessarily true. Let me tell you something. I would have bet you money. So you just probably see somebody looking Asian or Indian or something walking down the street and it just never occurred to you that they just might be Jamaican. Second of all, you just did. Come on, influences from these cultures are so obvious. I mean, come on now, curry goat. Even our national motto is out of many one people. Man, once in a while there's a day when I am just up to here with the nonsense and I just find it easier to just lie. Where are you from? I am from Jamaica. No, you're not.
Can't deal with this Ras idiot today, you know.
I'm just messing with you. I'm actually Egyptian. You can tell by the way Egyptian so much. Man, nowadays when I wear a Jamaican flag, it's not even a pride thing anymore. It's just so that people can stop coming up to me and chat in Spanish or Arabic or some Ras other language. ¿Cómo estás, your Ras? Some of our ancestors were slaves. Some of our ancestors were indentured servants. Some of our ancestors were slave earners. Jesus. Just because somebody not look like Bob Marley don't mean so them not Jamaican. And newsflash, Bob Marley's father was a white Jamaican. Coming like every time I go out the door, I have to turn history teacher. I don't grow ganja in my backyard. I don't say mon. I don't live in a tree or a hut. I don't ride jackass go work. I don't do voodoo. I am tired of this nonsense every last day. Jamaican is a nationality, not a race. So please, kindly take your stereotypes and shove them up your backside.
Believe that you are part of black culture.
I believe I'm a part of the Jamaican culture.
Okay.
What's the difference to you?
The difference to me is that what is the black culture, you cannot just define black culture as black culture because it varies. I relate with the Jamaican culture because it's a culture that I grew up in. You know, we have black British culture, so that's a different thing. But to me, black British culture is a merge of like Jamaican, Caribbean, and Africa and England together. That makes the black British culture. That's what I would say. But I cannot define in one sentence to say this is black culture because it's.
Can I ask a quick question?
Of course.
When did you decide that you were Jamaican? Was it when you came back over here? Was it when someone asked you? Like, was there an experience where you just felt I identify as a Jamaican man?
Let me explain to you there. And I don't know if I've ever said this on an interview anywhere yet, but my mother, before me, she had a miscarriage. So when she was pregnant with me, she could have gave birth to me in Jamaica.
Right.
But where we live, the hospitals weren't great. So obviously she has that opportunity to leave. Once she had me and did the checks, 3 months on a plane back to Jamaica. So from there until what I know has been that. So it's not like I wake up one day and say, oh, 5-year-old, I want to be Jamaican. Oh, 10-year-old, I think I'm Jamaican. 12-year-old,
cool.
I'm definitely Jamaican.
Yeah.
It's just what's inside. You understand what I mean, brother?
To call yourself a Jamaican, that's interesting because you said that you weren't born there. But I guess if the community to which you kind of were raised in, which is Jamaica, obviously, if they've embraced you, the large swaths of them and stuff, and if you've got citizenship, I don't know if you have, but yeah, from where I come.
Harry, do you have a Jamaican passport?
Yes, I do.
So I find it interesting as well because how do you decide? I'm from Jamaica. My grandparents are from Jamaica.
Yeah.
My dad's born there. My mum was born here. You probably would know more about Jamaica than me, just because I'm black now. If I said I'm Jamaican, no one's going to question me. You're just Jamaican.
Exactly.
But you probably know how to cook yard food. You know how to do all
That's
of that
my life.
better than me. So then, who are we to tell him? Actually, no, you're not Jamaican, just because he's white.
Is I went to school in Jamaica, so when people are when people here are talking about, oh, you cannot represent the culture, you're not from Jamaica, not this, like that, you know nothing about the black culture, and I'm like, you were born here, you were raised here, you went school here. That means if you went school for like how long do you go to school when you're here? Like what?
Too long.
Like, how many years? Just say like 12 years. Or something.
About that. Yeah.
So 14 years. Realistically, they only taught you what? 14 months of black history. My whole schooling was black history. So I learned everything about the culture. So when I'm in school, we don't have a month to say this is white history month because we have to accept that white. I don't care about that. I'm there to learn, and I'm not even there to learn. I'm just going with what I know is life.
Where were you born?
In Jamaica,
In Jamaica, which part?
parish of Portland.
Parish of Portland. Oh wow. All right. So, did you live in Portland your entire life while living in Jamaica?
No, Kingston.
You moved to Kingston?
As far as I can remember, I've been living in Kingston.
Oh.
We left Portland when we were very, very young.
Oh, okay. So, did you go to school in Kingston as well?
Kingston, yeah.
What school did you go to?
Franklin Town Elementary School.
Franklin Town Elementary. Did you go to a high school as well?
Eh?
Did you go to a high school as well?
Kingston Technical High School.
Okay. Why did your parents go to Jamaica?
That one I can answer.
Oh no. So, how did your parents get to Jamaica? How did your parents get to Jamaica? Were they born there?
My mom was born there.
My dad, I'm not sure.
You're not sure? Okay, all right.
Remember, it was emancipation, you know. So the slaves were free. They didn't want to work. So they had to go elsewhere for the Chinese and the Germans and the wherever they could find people who would work for little and nothing.
You look across and you recognize a seat or seats where certain people used to sit. Either they're no longer with us or they've migrated. And you get a sense of a haunting feeling.
They were having a bad time over there also, so if they come here, they would have a better life for they and their family, only to come in a worse situation.
Among the Jamaican in the street, there is a prejudice there against the minorities. And that prejudice actually came out during the Chinese riots. There were 2 riots in Jamaica against the Chinese.
He put his hand on the tree and he cut all his fingers off.
Hacker. My name is Delroy Hacker. I am of German ancestry. I'm about the 4th or 5th generation of the Germans that came here then in 1834, 1835. I told that if you were to come here like 40s, late 40s, 50s, when I was going to the school there, it'd be like you go to a school in Germany. They're white, like little white children.
It's not only the disbelief, but the certainty to which they assert the claim that, you know, of course you're not Jamaican. There's no other Jamaican than that, you know, our little stereotypical perception of the, you know, the black Rasta man with smoking the ganja, you know.
Because he told me that I don't like white people, you know, because white people are prostitutes and they are done. And uno fi dead because I uno slave with 4 parents. Mr. Man, you need to go back and read your history. And you will know that we were also slaves.
The amount of people who remain who are ethnically white is a diminishing amount of people. Similarly, of Chinese.
So outside of the Taino people, the Europeans, and the West Africans, Jamaica's population is also made up of the Indians from India, Chinese people, Syrian/Lebanese people, as well as some workers from Germany and Ireland came over to the island eventually. So we are essentially an amalgamation of all of those ethnic groups, but for the majority, we are of West African descent. So the Europeans that arrived in Jamaica later on were primarily Germans, Irish people, as well as Scottish people, and they came as workers. And there's actually a community in Jamaica that is called Seaford Town that is filled with descendants of those workers. So not all of the white people in Jamaica are direct descendants of slave owners. Some of them are descendants of white people from Europe who just came to work. So the Asian immigrants from India came as indentured workers. Brief history lesson: once slavery was abolished in Jamaica, the plantation owners, the colonizers, they still needed people to work for them, to work their land, to make money for them. So they pretty much had a bunch of workers from India come over. It wasn't called slavery this time, it was called indentured work. So essentially work that you would do, and in return you would get paid crumbs, pennies. Yeah, the conditions weren't ideal at all. So just, I guess, a watered down version of slavery. And eventually, some years later, workers came from what is now known as Lebanon. Jamaicans commonly refer to Lebanese people as Syrians, so you'll probably hear a lot of, you know, Jamaican people referring to having Syrian ancestry. Yeah, those were the Lebanese people that came over to Jamaica to work.
honestly wish that we would just have Donald Jasper Harris, sit down and answer some questions, or Kamala Harris to straighten it out for us. How could you just be purporting to be black and running around with Megan Thee Stallion, shaking her booty so you can raise money, bringing out Lil Jon, walking out to Beyonce, knowing that you are telling some very big lies? So here's the thing. What everyone agrees upon is that Donald J. Harris is the big question mark in this family. Something is not making sense. And that something is his written piece regarding his Jamaican heritage, his Jamaican ancestry. And I'm just going to quickly remind you of what instantly flagged me as odd about that piece. Well, first and foremost, as we have said many times, he mentions both his mother and his father only once in one sentence in that piece. That is it. Just one sentence dedicated to his mother and his father. Extremely strange if you are doing a piece about your heritage. He also rather mysteriously claims that he doesn't know the ancestry at all of his grandmother, Miss Iris. Miss Iris, he writes, Nay Finnegan. She wouldn't have been Nay Finnegan. She would have been Nay Allen. So that's strange to me as well, who he writes the entire article about. The entire article is about his grandmother, Miss Iris. So the fact that he is simultaneously claiming not to know her ancestry, we just got to run that through the bank of common sense, right? I was super close with both of my grandparents. It would be utterly bizarre for me to claim that I just didn't know their ancestry. Like, that is just something that comes up if you are very close to your grandparents, as he purports to be. He says Miss Iris raised him, and she was, Christiana Brown, Miss Chrissy raised him, and they were fortified and they were strong, and he learned all of these lessons from them. And yes, on Miss Iris, he just very quickly mentions that her ancestry is unknown to him. He also, in the piece, very obviously declines to mention all of his many siblings and half-siblings. Why hide any of this? This is not something that the world would be upset about or angry about. So I just don't understand why we are hiding certain relatives, pretending not to know certain ancestral things. What is the explicit aim of that? Maybe that simple, that you just want people to think that you're black because the Democrats are so reliant as they are upon the black vote. Maybe, but that just seems really foolish, because eventually someone was going to look into this and see all of these holes. Maybe they were thinking it just wasn't going to happen before the election. This woman writes, Indian here from India with some Indian context. BTW, love your work, Candace. Kamala's mother belonged to a very high-class bureaucratic family. So marrying someone outside your religion, caste, race in that era was extremely unlikely, especially for someone like Kamala's mother. Not to mention marrying a black person would be absolutely impossible, because racism has been prevalent in India as well. So I completely believe Kamala's dad not being black, rather being Irish, Indian, Hindu, since he looks like a lot of old Indian men that I see in real life here, especially the South Indians. The Communist Party also seems so interesting because in the 20th century, especially post-independence, communism was extremely popular in India, owing to the closeness to Soviet Union. And even today, some of the most influential and powerful political parties in India, especially South India, the region that Kamala's mom belongs to, are hardcore communist parties with hardcore communist ideologies even today. The head of the state of Kamala's mom is from has literally changed his family name to Stalin, LOL. Total personal opinion, but I absolutely believe Kamala's dad not being black at all, but Irish Hindu with maybe some Indian ancestry, because that's way more believable, especially when you know the family background and social class and status of Kamala's mom and the Indian society and mentality during the 20th century. P.S. As a non-American, I find it insane that this isn't mainstream news in your country. I follow global news, especially American news, very closely, and to find no one talking about this is almost a culture shock. Because had it been any other country, this would have been a huge media piece running across all news channels 24/7. Well, I'll tell you one thing. It would have been everywhere in America had it been Donald Trump. Donald Harris and Kamala herself are trying to pass off via a sleight of hand white Iris as black Iris, okay? I'm going to break this down again. I'm going to be real careful here. Black Iris is Iris Finnegan. He claims that Iris Finnegan, Black Iris, is Kamala's great-grandmother. She claims that it's her great-grandmother in her book, and we see no evidence of that aside from this picture, which Donald claims that he shot of Kamala sitting on her lap. I felt that Iris was the help. What we know about Iris Finnegan is that her maiden name is Allen. So she was born Aura Iris Allen Finnegan. Okay. And then she marries allegedly Patrick Finnegan and takes on the Finnegan last name. Okay. White Iris, on the other hand, was born Iris Cambridge and takes on the last name Harris. And she also has a baptismal name named Vioris. So she becomes Iris Cambridge Harris. Well, check this out. Okay. In 1958, Cynthia Cambridge and her now husband, Freemason Alvis Cambridge, arrived on a first-class ship into Miami from Jamaica. And aboard that ship was also Iris F. Harris. Now, pause. What is wrong with this? Pull it back up. What is wrong with this? Her middle initial. Why on earth? Now, it makes sense that Iris and Alves and Alves' wife are all on the ship together coming from Jamaica. They make a stop. The last port they stop at is Nassau, Bahamas, before they arrive into Miami. But why is Iris's middle initial F? She was not born. She was never married into a Finnegan family. Why did she adopt that middle initial? That's huge. It's very strange that she would have done that. Remember, Donald is alleging that Black Iris, the great-grandmother, right, at no point her last name would have been Harris, just Finnegan. She was born Iris Aura Allen, again, just reiterating that, and she became Finnegan when she got married to Patrick Finnegan. So we know that this is not her on board this ship with the Harris last name. We know for a fact that that is our white Iris who married Oscar Harris. But she never had a middle initial F. I think this is the earliest indication that she was taking on the identity of the help. I remain convinced that Miss Iris was in fact the help. I told you guys yesterday that we are trying to locate this older woman who wrote this comment under a YouTube video. It actually wasn't even our YouTube video. It was somebody else that was covering my content. She wrote this, if you want to pull that comment up. I am 76 years old. Years ago, I read an article about Kamala's family of slave owners. Miss Iris was one of the house slaves of Kamala's family. When the slaves got set free, Miss Iris was old and didn't want to leave the family. Miss Iris also had a daughter who was raised in the house with Kamala's family. Kamala's parents worked out of town a lot, so Kamala was basically raised by the Black women that worked in that house. If I remember correct, her mom was a professor in some big universities, and possibly her father held a government job and traveled a lot. I can't remember where the article was, but if you find it, you will have all the proof that you need. So I really would like to pick this woman's brain. I would like to speak to her and see if she can recall where this was published, because that so fits into everything that I've been saying. And like I said, part of this was just me exploring my own heritage. I told you my grandfather obviously was one of these families after slavery was abolished that opted in North Carolina. His family opted to just stay and continue working as sharecroppers. And so they worked on the same family that had enslaved them, they now worked for. So that makes sense. What that woman posted makes sense, but a YouTube comment is not proof. I do think seeing Iris F. Finnegan is some early indication. It makes complete sense if our suspicions are correct, right? Iris Cambridge is Irish. She is. And Oscar Harris is mixed Irish. That would make Donald Harris majority white. So if Kamala has a majority white father and an allegedly fully Indian mother, who I have my suspicions about, but I'm still taking my time to investigate her mother. I know I promised you that would be today, but I just want to dot my I's and cross my T's. Then that would make her indeed Indian Irish, just as Judge Joe Brown recalls. And again, this would be such an easy thing for Donald J. Harris to speak out against. You have two educated people. He'd be like, hey, Judge Joe Brown, what are you talking about? Why are you lying? Do you really think a judge would go on air and say all of those things, risking his reputation, his professional reputation, by just lying boldly? And to what end, by the way? Why would Judge Joe Brown, right? Just, again, common sense. Let's invoke a little bit of common sense here. Speaking of the very likely conclusion that she is majority Irish, that Donald J. Harris is majority Irish, it would also explain why the aforementioned Chris Harris, who signed off on Oscar Harris's death certificate as his son, that's him. These people look like Kamala's relatives. This would be Donald J. Harris's brother, who he intentionally chose not to mention in his piece, probably because, we're trying to make everybody think that Kamala is black. We need the help. We don't need the actual relatives. And this would be an actual relative. That man is extremely light. That man looks like he could be majority white, just as all of the documentation that we have is pointing to. That man would be the son of Iris Harris, who stole that middle initial for whatever reason and became Iris F. Harris on a ship manifest. Now, I'll ask you, when did you first get the idea that Kamala was black? Well, you'll say, yeah, when she kind of started running with Joe Biden. And that claim really came from Kamala herself. When they say a picture is worth 1,000 words, they understood that Kamala Harris published a book in 2019 called The Truth That We Hold. And presumably the book was filled with truth that she was holding. I had a look through it, and I saw this picture of her and her grandmother, clearly a black-looking grandmother, on page 282 in the photograph section. It reads, as you can see, visiting my paternal grandmother, Beryl, in Jamaica. Also on that same page, there's another photo of her. Again, you can see it's black and white. I'm not quite sure why it is black and white, but it says, when I was 10 months old, I visited Spanish Town, Jamaica. This is me with my mother and my paternal grandfather, Oscar Joseph. And now this guy looks mixed. He looks Asian of some description, but you can see the idea here is that she's definitely trying to introduce, in a manner of photos, things that make her race look more complicated. So I just decided to investigate that, and immediately things got weird, very weird. First and foremost, because it was very easy for me to determine via just a light search online that Beryl, her alleged paternal grandmother that you just saw, died 4 years before Kamala was born in 1960. This is Kamala's paternal grandmother, Beryl. Okay, now you can see on this birth certificate that Beryl is spelled with an I. It's Beryl Magdalene. And you can see the reason why we know this is the correct Beryl is because the mother is listed as Iris Finnegan. Later on, we're going to show you in the book, she names Iris Finnegan as her great-grandmother. So that would be Beryl's mother. So we have the right woman. Also, formerly, her maiden name is Allen. That is true. It also says here that she's born in October of 1917 in St. Anne. That's the St. Anne parish of Jamaica. And again, you can see it says that it is signed by Iris Finnegan. Very clearly, this is the woman that we are looking for. This is Kamala's grandmother, alleged grandmother, Beryl. It's also interesting, by the way, that it lists her great-grandmother as a seamstress because Donald Harris, Kamala's father, wrote in a 2020 piece called Reflections of a Jamaican Father, quote, Miss Iris, that again would be his grandmother, was the mother of 8 children, too, was the sweetest and gentlest person one could meet, but underneath it was a tough farming woman who ran the cane farm at Thatch Walk, near Annan Town, jointly owned with her husband, Mr. Christie. Okay, that's weird. So you're telling me that she ran a farm because on that birth certificate it says that actually Iris was a seamstress, but whatever. Let's just park that aside for a second and stick with Beryl, this woman who died before Kamala was born, okay? Because I was feeling pretty certain that not too many people were going to be named Beryl and be born in the St. Anne parish of Jamaica in 1917 to a mother named Iris Finnegan. I felt confident that we could find a little bit more data, and in fact, we did. Okay, so Kamala's grandfather is Oscar Wilde Joseph Brown Harris, and we can't find a marriage certificate between the two of them. That's very strange. As speculated, we were able to confirm that Kamala's Black grandmother that she showed us in that picture died in 1960 before Kamala was born. I can show you right now her death certificate. Let's take a look at Beryl's death certificate, which confirms As you can see there, it says that she died in July of 1960. It also tells us on the right-hand side, you guys will probably have to zoom in on this, but she died of a uterine infection, uterine fibroids due to a hysterectomy. It has her listed as 39 years. That's actually a couple of years off from 1917, so somebody may have gotten their math wrong here. But you once again see that it lists her birthplace as St. Anne. And so this is a huge scandal. Just an absolutely huge scandal. Kamala Harris published in her book that she was standing next to her Grandma Beryl. But Grandma Beryl died in 1960, 4 years before Kamala Harris was born. So who the hell is the real Beryl? Who is that woman standing next to Kamala Harris? And do you know what I noticed about that woman standing next to her? She looks a lot like the woman that Kamala claims in her book is her great-grandmother, Iris. Now, that's Iris Finnegan. Here's the book with my great-grandmother, Iris Finnegan in Jamaica. Now, I'm going to give you the side-by-side of Iris and her alleged daughter, Beryl, who died at 39. Now, that woman on the right is not 39 years old. How the hell does a person who is the vice president of the United States pass off a book, claim that these people that are in her book are her Black relatives, and nobody bats an eyelash or does even a peripheral search to recognize that the woman that she put forth is implausibly her grandmother? And by the way, I'm going to say this and people can be offended, but the first thing that I thought when I saw the photo of her sitting on her great-grandmother's lap was that this doesn't look like a grandparent affection going on here. Like, this woman looks like she could be working for the family. Quite literally, I thought to myself, this woman looks like she could be the help. And I thought that because there's a lack of affection there. Do you know what I mean? But there's no, like, in both of the photos, there's a lack of affection. It's just like a woman standing next to her. And I obviously know that that was a circumstance. When you're talking about a family that had a ton of plantations, which is the reality. She descends from Irish slavers. That is a fact that Kamala Harris cannot deny. She descends from wealthy Irish slavers who virtually they did own the town. They named the town. It was Hamilton Town, then it was Brownstown in Jamaica. He had over 1,000 slaves, okay? It would follow that there would be help around the house. And I'm just going to put here as a question mark, not as a fact. If they're looking at some of these photos of people who became like family and they're trying to pass them off like relatives, again, not a fact, a huge question mark, but my instinct tells me that that person is actually not her family member. And if it is, well, Kamala's got some explaining to do. How did she meet Grandma Beryl almost 20 years after Grandma Beryl died? Because Kamala Harris looks to be about 20 in that photo that she presented. So we left off interested in Vioris Cambridge Harris McPherson, okay? This is a woman that we believe is Kamala's grandmother, or her mother, really. She looks so much like her. But anyways, her true grandmother, not Beryl, a woman who I believe looks a little too much like Kamala and has been rather conspicuously just left out of the family Jamaican heritage story. So I'm just going to show you the side-by-side of Kamala and Vioris. And we then learned, because someone pointed it out to us, that actually Vioris's birth name is Iris. I can't believe I missed this. I produced the birth certificate and obviously did not read it for details. But yes, if you look at her birth certificate again, it actually says in that second column that her birth name is Iris. Now that explains why whoever created her profile on Ancestry.com put Iris in parentheses. On that far side, it says Vioris Anita, and that's her baptismal name. As I've been going through all of these documents, I realized baptismal names are very important, or were at this time, because they then used them and pretended that it was their legal names on other documents. But yeah, so when we see that, and we go, okay, so we now have a grandma Iris. That's very interesting. We know that this woman was born in 1927 in St. Elizabeth, Jamaica, and her last name was Cambridge. And I'm wondering, and I'm sure you're wondering, could she be the Miss Iris that Donald refers to so affectionately throughout his piece? He claims in that piece, by the way, that Miss Iris's ancestry is unknown to him, right? He also claims that that Iris that he mentions is his grandmother. So it would be Kamala's great-grandmother and not her grandmother, which I suspect she is. And I'm going to show you the extremely black woman that we are shown a picture of. A picture that he claims he captured of Kamala sitting on Miss Iris's lap. Now, I have received, by the way, a note from a woman who is in her 70s who swears that she knew this family and that that woman there worked for the family. Actually, I'm going to have to start calling them like White Iris and Black Iris, like just because I think it's easier for you guys to know who I'm speaking about. So White Iris, who died in Broward County, we know for a fact now that she is related to Kamala Harris. And I'm going to tell you how we determine that fact. It is now undeniable. Because when Kamala Harris was effectively handed the torch from Biden after they staged an effective coup back in August, CNN couldn't help themselves and immediately ran an article, instantly reminding the world that Kamala's black. She's Jamaican. Instantly, let's blackify her immediately. Here is the article that they ran. And it essentially had a title like about her Jamaican roots or whatever. And embedded in the article, it was a man named Sherman Harris. And he was speaking about his second cousin, Kamala. I'm just going to read this to you. It says 3.5 years ago, Sherman Harris gathered together a clutch of family and friends at his home on a hilltop here in rural Jamaica to watch his cousin step into history. As Kamala took the oath of office as vice president of the United States, the room erupted in screams and tears, he recalled. Quote, even talking to you now, I feel some sort of tears from my eyes too. You know, Oscar Harris, that would be Kamala's grandfather, Donald Harris's father, and his father, Newton Harris, were brothers. So that would make Kamala his second cousin. Okay. Now, if my theory is correct, that would mean that he knew White Iris very well, because we know that White Iris and Oscar Harris were married until death did him part, until he died. Well, guess what we found? That same cousin Sherman Harris, who was featured in that CNN piece just from August, we were crawling through Facebook. We found his Facebook page, and he posted a sweet tribute to his Aunt Iris, White Iris. It was a Facebook posting of White Iris's obituary, and beneath that obituary posting, he wrote this tribute to her. There it is. You can see the third one down says Sherman Harris. Rip, Auntie, you're never forgotten. Lasting memories of shared episodes. That is the exact same Sherman Harris pictured in the CNN article. And again, this was posted under the obituary of the Iris Harris that died in Broward County. So this confirms that Iris, the White Iris, is indeed related to Kamala and Donald Harris. If Sherman is telling the truth, this would make Iris her grandmother officially. Kamala Harris must answer for this. She absolutely must answer this. You cannot be posting up pictures of you with the black woman saying that it's your grandma, okay? You cannot do that. And then come to find out there was another woman who you look much more like, and we have all of the evidence in the world that she is your true grandmother. That is just, it is too wild. It is just too out of pocket. We are going to need answers to that. Because if what Sherman Harris, who was interviewed by CNN, is saying is true, then there is no room here. There's no situation in which Black Beryl, this woman, is her legitimate grandmother, okay? And by the way, I want to say, just keeping up, looking at this Beryl, she in no way favors Donald Harris. Let's get a side-by-side of Beryl and Donald Harris. Like, what are we even speaking about? If you put this together, how are you getting Beryl from this woman and Oscar Harris? I don't see it. Now, again, genes can be funny, but then when you put him next to our White Iris, I go, okay, look at those squinty eyes here. I could see a little bit of a similarity here. He does seem to somewhat favor her. Again, now we're just believing our own eyes and asking the right questions. What we do know for a fact is that woman on the right, Iris Harris, is related to Kamala Harris, and we need answers, okay? We need answers. Now, also last week, we left you on a tidbit. We were searching for a Christopher Harris. Do you guys remember that? I'm going to briefly jog your memory here. Christopher Harris was the, at the time, anonymous person who signed off on Oscar Harris's death certificate. Now, we were just imagining, okay, we're looking for information on Donald. We know Oscar Harris was married to Iris, Vioris, whatever you want to call her. And I would just imagine that Donald would have been there by his father's side when he died, because when your father dies, you tend to be by their side. Well, I'm going to pull up that death certificate again. This is, again, Oscar Harris's death certificate. And you can see on the bottom there, number 16. If you go right there to the bottom, it says, qualification, meaning the person filling this out, the qualification is that he is the son of Oscar Harris. And then it says something about the body being buried, and he signed it off. And we were going, okay, who is this Christopher Harris? Like, this would mean that Donald Harris has a brother. This means that this guy would be definitively be Kamala's uncle. Where is he in the world? Well, we were able to locate Chris. He was also featured in the Kingston Gleaner. That has given us a lot of information, the newspaper, in an article that was dated back to June 24th, 1983, announcing the Council of Jamaicans in Ontario, Canada. I'm going to show you a picture, okay? See these pictures of these people. That one in the middle is Chris Harris. Presumably, that would be Oscar Harris's son that he had with Iris Vioris Harris, okay? I find it rather off-putting that Donald Harris does not mention many of his siblings in his piece about his Jamaican heritage. It seems like he's continually leaving out the white people. That just makes me a little bit uncomfortable. I'd almost say it's racist. Just abandon an entire side of your family. Like Alves Cambridge. You guys familiar with that? Never heard of that name. It's okay. So Alves Cambridge, interestingly enough, is the brother of our white Iris down in Florida, okay? She had a brother named Alves, and they lived near each other in Broward County, and they were extremely close. Many of you guys pointed out to me that I missed in her obituary, and I did miss this. I don't know how I did, but there were so many pictures of her and her family, and so many pictures of Alves and his wife of 68 years with Iris. They were extremely tight-knit. That was all very true. And Alves Cambridge passed away in 2020, and in his obituary, there were some things that were of interest and sent me down various rabbit holes, and I'm still collecting that data. But I want to show you his obituary, particularly the second page of it, okay? This third portion here, okay? Al would want you to know that he was a Freemason and visited many lodges around the world on his travels. He was also president of the Jockey Club for a time. Okay, so this means that when this man passed away, he wanted the world to know. This is, again, Iris's brother Alves that she came over with on a ship. We found the ship logs. I believe it was in 1958. She came over with him on a ship, and they settled in Miami-Dade. And he wanted the world to know after he passed away that he was a Freemason and he visited many lodges around the world. Literally asking the question, she was in Jamaica. How can you say that she's not black? How can you even ask me this question? Like, where is your common sense? If I up and move to Sweden, I get to suddenly say I'm white? What's wrong with you guys? I mean, this is like common sense. Of course, there are white people in Jamaica. There are white people everywhere. There are white people in Africa. It does not make them black. Elon Musk is not a strong black man. As much as I would love for him to be able to say he's a strong black man to really upset the left, that's just not the circumstance. There's no version of reality that we exist in. And so this is fascinating. This is fascinating because this shows you a tremendous character flaw that we are stumbling upon. And a person that will steal an identity, like I said, a true communist trade. This is what they did. They were the best at it. They always took on different names. They took on different identities. They would style themselves differently. You have to remember that there was this influx of people also that were coming in from Russia. So many of the ills that we have in society today is because we received so many immigrants and there was no correct process of filtration to determine which one of these psychos, amongst these people, how many of these people were the absolute psychos that were mass murdering Christians, okay, like mass murdering Christians leading up and after World War II and throwing us into gulags versus people that were actually escaping for freedom. There was no method. There was no method. There was just an open season of people moving around the world. This is what happens at the end of wars. This is why wars are dangerous.
I would like to know how you all feel about this situation, and while you are letting me know, could you please like and share this video and subscribe to Geneva's Closet if you haven't already done so right here on YouTube. And you can follow me on Facebook at Geneva's Closet, and you can email me at genevascloset22@gmail.com. You all have a fabulous day, and I will talk to you later. Bye.